So welcome to Plan with Purpose. So this is something that we've worked on for the last couple of years, and it's really helped us, get clear on what we want out of our lives, and then really make sure that we're doing the right things in both our lives and our businesses to make sure that that happens. And to be honest, we really didn't think too much of this. This was just the process that we had developed. And as we started talking to other people, as people were asking us, how do you guys get everything done? And how have you been able to build the lives that you're dreaming about? And we started sharing these, and we're like, wow, that's really good. So what we wanted to do was really share that with more people and make sure that, people that are looking for financial freedom, people that are looking for, that life that they want to build, that they have this as a solid foundation and a solid starting point. So what we're going to go through today as we jump in here is really taking a look at 6 key steps that will help you get this all put together. So first step's going to be describe. Then we're going to define, and you can see Ariana really likes the alliterations here. We've got process, we've got prioritize, progress, and then finally distill. And actually, Ariana's going to throw a link to free worksheets right in the chat box for you guys. So we've got worksheets that go through each of these 6 steps. So if you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay, you guys can actually follow along. And then this will make it easier for you guys to fill out the key information for your life and what you're looking for.
Hey, Tammy.
All right,
we're just getting started.
All right, so we want to introduce you guys to Sam. And Sam is, just like the majority of us, he was on this traditional path in life, so he went to school and he got good grades, or maybe he didn't get such good grades. But anyways, he was going to school and then he went to college, right, went that traditional route and got a job. And a lot of us can probably, identify with Sam because that's the route that most of us are on traditionally. But along the way, something happened to Sam, and he realized that, he really wanted more out of life. This path that he was on wasn't really satisfying his needs and really the life that he wanted to build. Oh, and by the way, it wasn't just Sam. It was also Sam and his family. So as we go through this, one of the things that we've got to keep in mind is that, we've got a life that we want to build, but especially for people that are typically on this call and people that work with us, we really want to make sure that it's the life that our families want to build as well. So the whole point of doing this webinar for you guys is really to make sure that we help you guys build that life you want so you have more time for your family and for the things you want, and you have less stress. That can be stress in your business. If you have a business, that can be less stress in your job. And especially if you're looking to transition from a job into having your own business, making sure that you set this up so that you don't get completely overwhelmed. And one of the biggest things is making sure that you don't actually have to sacrifice your family time in order to build this business, to build the dreams that you want. So that's our hope for you guys from this workshop. So as we said, there's going to be 6 steps. So we'll start out with the first one, which is really describing what you want to have. So we're going to go back to Sam, and Sam says, I want to be an entrepreneur, but my spouse doesn't get it. Now I can identify with Sam because I was actually in this very spot. I wanted to start a business, and I really struggled because I was trying to get Ariana on board, and she just had really no interest in becoming an entrepreneur. And then, Sam's also looking at, I've worked so hard, and, I've done everything I'm supposed to do in my career, and it just doesn't seem like everything's working out the way it should be. So there's 2 common mistakes that we find people run into when they do a vision board or when they start looking at, this bigger picture for their life. The first one is they're actually not connecting the vision for their business to the vision that they want to have out of their life, right? So a lot of people will actually skip over this step and they'll start building a business, but that business may or may not actually connect back to what they want their life to look like. So they may build a successful business, but while they've done that, their life is actually falling apart. Or 2, they're not actually including their spouse or, other people that are important in their life in these conversations about the future. Because as we saw with Sam, it's not just about what Sam wants, but also about what his family wants. So as you're going through this, we encourage you to make sure that you're working with your spouse or you're working with other people that are going to be impacted and other people that are going to be a part of, this life that you're building. So a couple questions, what does your ideal life look like? Now, when we first asked this question to a lot of our coaching clients, normally it's like deer in a headlight because we've never really thought about, what I want that life to look like. A lot of us get stuck into, this hamster wheel that we're on in this day-to-day grind. And we don't actually take a step back to say, well, if I could really design my ideal life, what would that look like? So one activity that really works well for this is really figuring out, what does your perfect day look like? So if you could pick a day and live the way you wanted, what time would you wake up? What would that day consist of? Who would you spend it with? So really articulating what that is. Also, what's the big picture vision that you have for your life? So if you take a look back and you identify, what do you want your life to look like overall? What does that look like? And then finally, what are some of the important things to you and your family? So what we're going to do is actually show you guys how to create a vision board. And you might have done an activity like this in the past. This is probably going to look a little different, but you can really cater this to whatever your needs are. So when we define a vision board, we like to hit on 4 key areas. So the first one is experiences, right? Like, what experiences do you want to have in your life? Do you want to take your kids to Disney World? Do you want to travel to, distant countries? Do you just want to be able to have more time, with the family in your life and be able to spend that time? So getting clear on what those experiences are that you want to have. Things, we all want things. This could be, a nicer car. This could be a bigger house. This could be, some activities and, some of the hobbies that you have and things that are related to those. And I just want to call out that it's not bad to have experiences or things, right? So part of building this ideal lifestyle is really defining what those things are, and then don't feel ashamed for wanting more out of your life. But with that said, one of the biggest things that we found is for people, the experiences are great, the things are great, but the biggest thing that really drives people to build a better life is the impact that they can have. So I was at a conference this past weekend, and what we ended up finding was we were talking to a lot of people, and they wanted, certain things out of life, but the impact was really the thing that drove them. So who can they help? How can they leave the world a better place? And then finally, what are some of the business, or if you're in a job still, the career ambitions that you have? So by laying all of these things out, what you're able to do is actually envision what the future looks like. And what does this actually accomplish for you? So the first piece is you're going to make sure that everything's connected. So we find far too often that people will lay more emphasis on one aspect of their life and not the other, and it ends up, taking away. So by doing this, you make sure that you're hitting on each aspect of your life and that they're supporting each other. And then the second thing we find from a lot of people as they go through and build this vision board is that it actually gives them motivation, because they've never done this activity before. And once they've laid out that life that they want, they're like, yes, that would be awesome. I'd love to achieve that. And actually a tip that, one of our colleagues had was, once you've laid that out, go out and actually experience the things you put on your board. So if there's a car you want, go out and actually drive that car and get that feeling of sitting in there. If there's a trip or an ideal day you have, go and actually live that ideal day, because it's going to take it beyond just the vision board, and it's also going to allow you to actually make sure that you feel that and it drives forward for you. All right, so step 2, now that you get your vision defined, now you got to figure out what you need to do. So we're going to go back and visit Sam. So Sam says, great, I have a vision. Now what the heck do I do with it? How do I get there? Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take your vision and we're actually going to break it down into a roadmap. So what this is going to allow you to do is figure out, how do your big goals fit into your timeline? Right, and we're going to break them up into smaller goals and have milestones that you can check in along the way. And finally, we're going to help you set up a system to make sure that you're not just doing this goal planning and then it's done. You actually have a process for checking in with that. So this is an example of a roadmap that we put together. And you'll see on here that we've got different time frames, and how far out you look is actually up to you. But the key thing is that you want to look out over different periods of time, because you might have some goals that are going to be shorter term and some that are going to be longer term. So the way you fill this out is you actually put all the things that you had on your vision board on the left-hand side. So if you think about the analogy I love to use is GPS, right? So when you use GPS in your car, what do? Well, you identify your starting point, which is where you're at today. You identify the destination where you want to get to, which is really your life vision. And then what your GPS does is it's actually going to map out a plan for you, a route for how you get there. So what we're doing here is essentially doing that same thing. We're going to map out how you go from where you're at today to where you want to be. So with the vision laid out, now what you're going to do is you're going to start taking some of your big goals and you're going to lay them out over time to the right time period. So for example, you might have a goal to quit your job and achieve financial freedom. And as you're talking about this, hopefully with your spouse, what you're able to do is say, 3 years seems about a right time frame for us to be able to do that. Now you're going to lay in your other goals and identify what time frames seem right and where you guys would want them to be. And then you're ultimately going to break them down into smaller milestones so that you can see along the way how are these goals actually able to be achieved, because you're going to take smaller incremental goals along the way. So what does this accomplish for you guys? Well, the key thing here is it's going to be intentional. So I always like to tell people that this is really your North Star, right? So the plan that we create today, your roadmap, it's not going to be right. It's going to change. But what it's going to do is it's going to give you a direction that you want to go. So maybe it takes you 2 years to leave your job. Maybe it takes you 5. But as long as we know where you're going, the things on here can shift, but you're going to make sure that you're continuously going in the direction of the things that you want to achieve. All right. So step 3 is actually creating your process. So if we go back to Sam, Sam says, great, now I have a vision and a roadmap. I'm very happy. And then he says, but, things have gotten in the way. Life happened, right? That happens to all of us, whether we have kids, whether we don't. Life just always happens to, kind of come up. So what we want to do here is to create a process. So now that you've got this plan in place, you'll actually have some check-in points, just like GPS, right? If you take a long turn or if you get off track, it says, hey, you should be turning left, or hey, you got to turn back around. It's going to help you be consistent, and the consistency is really what helps drive this process. And it's going to help you to identify that you're not going to go straight from A to B, but you may go from A to B to C to B to C. So it's going to allow you to really figure out where you're at and then what you need to do next. And finally, it's going to allow you to get started, and then you can grow and really evolve this as you start using it. So this may seem a little overwhelming, but I'm going to walk through it. So these are essentially the different time frames and the different meetings that we use and we recommend to all of our clients. So if we start at the top, once a year, you're going to have a big picture goal planning session. And what you're going to do here is you're going to update your roadmap, and you're going to reflect on the last year and really kind of say, all right, for the last year, what went well, what didn't go well, and what do we want to improve for the next year? You're going to take a look at some of your metrics. You're going to say, how much money did we bring in? How did we do on actually achieving our goals? And did any of them have to shift? And then you're going to look forward to the upcoming year, and you're going to break your goals down into those milestones. And now that same process of reflecting, reviewing your metrics, and then planning your next process is what every one of these other meetings is going to be. The only difference is they're going to change the time frame. So when you get together and work through your annual goal planning, that's probably going to take you about a day. But then every quarter or every 90 days, you're probably going to take about half a day and do the same type of thing, but you're only going to look at the last 90 days. So what this allows you to do is say, all right, last 90 days, this is what I achieved, this is what I didn't. And then going forward to the next 90 days, what do I got to do in order to continue driving in the right direction and maintaining my goals? Every week, and this is really going to be the key one, every week you're going to do the same thing, but you're just going to look back at the last week. So this might only take you an hour a week. And this is one of the key things that we use and we do to actually make sure that we're on the same page and that we're progressing and we're ultimately going to hit our goals. And then every day we take 15 minutes at the beginning of the day and we go through a couple things. What work did we complete yesterday? What are we planning to do today? And is there anything in our way? And so by doing these different meetings, it lets us make sure that we're still progressing in the right direction. And if there's anything that comes up, we can make adjustments to continuously make the process better. So what does this accomplish? Like I said, going back to the GPS analogy, this really helps you to make sure that when you get off the path or when things change, you identify it early and you adjust. So a lot of people will only look at their goals at the end of the year. They got off way before, and if they would have identified it earlier, they could have made some adjustments, but now it's too late. All right, so step 4, how do you prioritize and plan? So we're going back to Sam. Sam says, awesome, I've got my timeline and I've got all the big things laid out. So how do I figure out what to do next, right? I've got an overwhelming to-do list. When am I going to get all of this stuff done? And then finally, how do I know what to focus on? I mean, this is one of the biggest questions that we get. And entrepreneurs that aren't able to do this really end up struggling because it's like that never-ending to-do list. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through doing a brain dump so you get all of these things out of your head. We're going to help you categorize these different ideas and projects and then organize and plan your week so that you can actually get these things done. So this is one of Ariana's favorite activities that we do, which she calls a brain dump. And essentially what it is just like it sounds. I got all these thoughts in my head, and I'm just going to get them all down, in this case on a whiteboard. For you, it could be on paper, but it's taking all of that overwhelm and getting it out so you can see it. And, you know, if you guys know our backstory, so we have 3 different businesses, plus we have our personal life, and we have 2 kids. So by doing this brain dump, we can get it all down, and then we can go through and figure out, you know, what are really the key things that we should focus on and what's got to shift. So when we do this, we're actually going to start grouping the activities by our personal tasks. And then if you've got a business, you may do it by the maintenance or sustaining tasks that are going to make sure that you run your business. And then also the growth tasks to make sure that you grow your business and you're ultimately making more revenue and more profit. And as you start grouping your activities into these different buckets, what you also want to look at is what are the urgent and important activities, right? What are the things that have to be done in the next 1 to 2 weeks, and the things that are really going to, you know, be important to you personally or keep your business running or move it forward. And what you want to then deprioritize is the things that are not urgent and not important. So this quadrant actually is very helpful for a lot of people when they go through this activity. And if you take everything on your list and you go through and define, is it urgent or not urgent? And is it important or not important? What this will then tell you is, you know, what should I be doing with that? So if something's urgent and important, you're going to do it now. You're going to do it today. That should be on your list. If something's important but it's not urgent, you know, you're going to schedule when you do that. Maybe it's next week. Maybe it's, you know, next month or next quarter. If something is not important and it's urgent, you're going to delegate it. So this is the great opportunity if you're automating some of your processes or if you're hiring a VA or hiring someone on your team to be able to hand it off to them. And if it's not urgent and not important, this might sound tough, but you're actually not going to do it. And it takes a big weight off your shoulders when you actually get rid of this, because now it's not taking your mental space. So you may be a little concerned about doing this, but let me tell you, once you get this out of your head and you can really focus on the important things, it makes a whole world of difference with gaining that momentum. All right. And so now that you know what you need to do, how do you actually organize and plan your week out? So we're big fans of using Scrum or Kanban, and all those really are a visual board. So you can see here we've got to do, doing, and done. So when you start out with organizing your tasks, we want to keep it simple, right? So all the important tasks and the urgent tasks that you identified are going to go in your to-do column. And like this picture shows, and what we do is we actually color code things so we can clearly see, okay, how much of that is personal versus how much of that is business. You're only going to focus on 1 week. So all the rest of the stuff you'll be able to pull in at that weekly planning session. But this week, we just want to focus on what you got to get done. So when you start moving tasks from your to-do column to your doing or your in progress, you really want to limit how many of those there are. So you don't want to have 20 things that are in progress because you're not going to be able to get any of them done. You're going to move each of them forward a little bit. But what we want to see here is that you focus on 1 to 2 tasks, you get those done, and then you pull in the next set of tasks. And then you want to really keep those done notes because you're going to be using those at the end of the week to really look at what did you complete and what maybe did you not complete. And then you want to look at for an opportunity to make the things better or figure out why weren't you able to complete some of those things. All right, so what this accomplishes, this is huge. If you've ever suffered from not feeling like you have any momentum, if you've ever suffered from shiny object where you feel like you've got to buy the next course or you've got to use the next tool or there's just overwhelm, what this process really allows you to do is figure out what you need to do both from a bigger picture and then specifically for that week so that once you've got that plan in place, you don't let anything else throw you off of that plan. So if something new comes in, you say, okay, if that's not urgent and important, it's going to go on for next week. So you can use that quadrant we used before to figure out what you should be focused on and what can wait. All right, step 5, tracking your progress. This is a big one that a lot of people end up missing out on. So if we talk to Sam, he says, this looks great, but how am I actually going to know if I'm getting closer to my goals, right? This is something that a lot of people struggle with is they do work, but they're not sure if the work they're doing is actually going to get them to their goals. And then he says, not everything in my business is measurable. So how do I start looking at some of those things if I can't measure them? So what you're going to do is actually assign metrics, and then you're going to want to figure out how and when to actually view those metrics, and then what to do when it's just not seeming like things are adding up or going in the direction that you want. So how do we assign metrics? So a key thing with this is looking at, what is the sequence of events that are going to go on for either a process or for people, and then making sure that we're checking in along the way at how those processes or people are progressing. So what this allows you to do, for example, let's say that we've got a product that we're selling. And in order to sell that, a basic process is we get people into a Facebook group and we engage with people there. And then we want those people to get on to our email list, for example, to then engage with us more and to give them some value. And ultimately, we want to sell a product to help them at the end of that. So obviously, this is a very simple example, but hopefully this will allow you to see how to use metrics. So the first thing we're going to look at is, well, how many new members are in my Facebook group each week? Because I know that's going to be the beginning of, let's say, my sales funnel in this example. So the first step for people is to get into our Facebook group. So you can see each week, am I adding new members? Is the number of members that are coming in growing or decreasing? And then what impact does that have then on people turning into email subscribers? So I can see like in week 1, I had 20 new people and I got 30 new email subscribers. Great. But then I can see in week 2, I actually got less new people into my group. And as a result, I had only 10 email subscribers. And then we can see week 3 and week 4. So as I'm looking at these, some questions that stand out to me automatically are, well, what was the difference between week 1, week 2, and week 3? Because we were continuously getting less and less new people in. Were we not marketing enough? Were the different ways we were trying to market really not resonating with people? But it allows you to start asking some of those questions. And ultimately, what we're looking for here is we want to be able to sell our product. We want to be able to help those customers out. So if I now look at these 3 metrics every week, what I can identify is, okay, am I getting in front of enough new people? Are those people now getting warmed up? And then finally, are they able to purchase? And as I'm looking at this, I might find that, for example, we're getting a lot of new people in. They're actually warming up and joining our email list, but they're not buying. So now I know that that's a gap in our process, and we can really start looking at, well, why aren't people buying? Maybe I'll reach out to them directly and ask, or maybe I'll start looking and tweaking or testing different things to see if that has a positive impact. So by looking at these key metrics, it really helps guide you on where you should focus next in your business. And so part of this too is defining, what metrics should you be looking at, and then how often should you look at them. So there's a lot of metrics out there that would be basically vanity metrics. So they look good, but they don't really tell you anything. So an example of a vanity metric is something that only goes up and doesn't change. So you don't want to just look at, let's say, the Facebook group. You don't just want to look at the total number of group members, because each week that's going to go up, but it doesn't really tell you if your marketing efforts or your attempt to get people into your group are more effective or not. So what you want to look at is, the change in members, the number of new members that come in. And then we recommend generally looking at your metrics every week, because that's going to help you plan for the next week. And then on a monthly and quarterly and annual basis, you can take a look at that bigger picture metric and see any major trends or any major shifts that you may want to make in your business. And so then finally, what do you do when things don't add up? So one of the first things you can look at was, did you set your expectations too high? A lot of people talk about really setting really big goals. But one of the challenges with that is if you set really big goals and you're not able to achieve those, you're really going to demoralize yourself and not have that momentum. So you really want to set, goals that, maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone, but they're realistic. And then the next thing you want to look at is, are you tracking the right metrics? So we don't have enough time to go into this on this workshop, but one of the things you can look at is, qualitative metrics are really about, they're not things you can fill out in a survey, but they're more the deeper insights from people. And in some cases, you have quantitative metrics. Those are numbers or things that can be in a spreadsheet. So the last slide that we were on, I showed you guys some quantitative metrics, right? So we can tell maybe that we're not having as many customers buy as we'd like to. So I may want to go back and actually talk to those customers one-on-one and get some qualitative metrics. When I talk to them, they might say, this is great, but I actually needed this other thing. And if you add that other thing in, I'll buy. So you can look at the types of metrics you're getting and maybe switch back and forth to get the information you need to then be able to move forward. And finally, you want to identify what's getting in the way. So for example, if you wanted to have a bunch of new people join your email list and it's just not seeming like it's going to happen, now you can deep dive into that. Well, what's going on? First off, is all my technology set up so people can actually join? If that's the case, are the marketing channels that I'm using working? Maybe I'm really trying to get people on Pinterest, but my ideal customer isn't on Pinterest. Maybe they're on LinkedIn. So by identifying those metrics and then really asking what's getting in the way, next week you can test something else out. So maybe I don't focus on Pinterest, but I actually focus on LinkedIn, and then I look at my metrics and see, has that actually improved things? And so what does this accomplish? Tangible, visible proof that you're moving forward. And I'll tell you guys, one of the biggest things that keeps people going is having that momentum. And how you have that momentum is to actually be able to see that you're able to move forward and that you're making progress. So if you're early on in your business, this progress might not be in terms of dollars, but it might be in terms of people saying, oh, this is great. I wish I would have found you guys before. Oh, where has this product been all my life? So that's, signs that you're making traction and you can move forward. And then you want to look at that correlating into moving people down the sales path so they can ultimately become customers and you can help them out. All right, and step 6, I know we've been going through a lot here, but we'll give you guys some time for questions in a little bit. So distilling who you need to be. So Sam says, all right, there's so many successful people out there, and I'm just at the beginning of my journey. I feel like they know so much. How am I ultimately going to be able to make this happen? And how am I going to get there, right? So that's what Sam's looking at. So the key thing here is really distilling and figuring out who do you need to be able to build and live that life that you want. And so there's a couple activities that we're going to run you guys through that are really going to help you figure out who you need to be today in order to be able to build that life. And so the couple activities are be, do, have, identifying where you're at now, and then identifying some of the shifts that you need to make in order to actually build that life. So be, do, have, I love this activity. And essentially what this comes down to is if you have one of two paradigms. So there's a paradigm out there called the victim paradigm. And you guys have probably, seen other people like this, and who knows, you might have even done it yourself sometimes. And the victim paradigm goes something like this. They look at someone successful and they say, well, of course that person's successful. They had a lot of money, or they were born into a great family, or they went to this school. But essentially what they're saying is they're taking and making an excuse for why that person's successful. And then by doing that, they're not taking ownership for letting themselves be successful. So they're putting it on someone else and saying, well, of course they're successful. I could never be that way. But if you look at the victor paradigm, and this is what successful people do, they look at what other people are doing and say, well, how do I do that? Right? Who do I have to be in order to do the things they did in order to have what they wanted? Right? So what we're looking at with this entire process is basically saying, define what you want to have. That was the vision. Then work backwards and say, okay, what's the roadmap and what do I have to do to achieve that vision? And what we want to look at now is, okay, what type of person do I have to be? What sort of mentality do I have to do those things to have that life I want? Right? So that's a big difference between, people that are successful and people that aren't. So a second piece of this is really this concept of a SWOT analysis. So this actually is typically applied to business, but we found a lot of benefit in applying it even to ourselves. So essentially what the SWOT analysis is you take a look at your strengths, your weaknesses, and then your opportunities and your threats. And by doing this self-analysis and even getting input from others, you can make sure that you're focusing on your strengths. You can understand your weaknesses, and maybe you'll do some improvements on those. But then you'll be able to see, well, what are the opportunities for you to grow, from a personal perspective, and then what things could throw you off. What are some of the threats to your plan? And you want to be able to identify those and then mitigate that risk. And then finally, you want to identify some of the shifts that you need to make, oftentimes from your mentality, in order to make this work. So one of my favorite things to do is go find someone that is already doing or already has what you want, and start identifying, what are some of the skills or some of the mentalities or some of the shifts that they have that have allowed them to be successful. So a great example of this is I found that people that were successful typically read a lot of books. And I hated reading books. Like, I would do everything I could to avoid that. But as a result of that, I was able to start reading books, start learning, so that I had the skills and the knowledge and the confidence to build, these businesses and then build this life that we're looking for. And then finally, what habits or characteristics do you need to adjust? So you might have some blocks or some mentality shifts that need to happen so that you can actually build this life you want and have that success. Okay, so what does this accomplish? It allows you to identify the shifts that you have to make, and you can start acting and thinking that way now and continuously get better with it. And I'll tell you, everything else isn't going to matter if you don't have the right mentality to be able to make this work. So many people end up self-sabotaging because they don't think they're good enough, or they don't have the confidence in that. But I'll tell you, once you get that confidence and once you start thinking that way today, it's amazing what you're able to do and how much you're able to achieve. All right, so that was a lot of information. What are we, about 30 minutes in?
You did pretty good. I thought I was going to have to move you along.
But I'll tell you, so hopefully you guys have grabbed the worksheets. If not, grab the link that's in the chat box. And, you can take some time. This recording will be available afterwards. But I really encourage you to go through each of these activities. And by the time you get to the end of it, you're going to feel so much more confident and have such a better understanding of, what life you want, and then the process and some of the steps that you can take to get started. So with that said, I can't see the chat box yet. I'll take a look. But if you guys have any questions on any steps of this process, make sure that you click on the comment box, put your questions in there, and then we'll give you guys a couple minutes to get those in there, and then we'll be doing Q&A at the end of this.
We do have one. So
we do have one.
Yes.
All right, beautiful. So if there's any other questions on any other part of this process, let us know.
I know it was fast.
It was fast. I was going to say, I can talk, I've done presentations on this, that have been 2 hours. And I've done some workshops where we've actually done this where it's been half a day or a full day. So I know there's a lot of information crammed into a little bit of time. And so with that, Ariana and I want to introduce you guys to something that we're going to be putting out next month, which is actually called our Lifestyle Builders Mentorship.
I know we've been alluding to things happening in the background. And we were deciding if we wanted to reveal it early or if we wanted to hold off. But we figured, why not just kind of give you guys the heads up while you're here on the live workshop. And that way, if you have any questions or anything like that, we're right here to let you know in the Q&A while we're answering other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just wanted to share with you guys, what this is and why we're offering this. So if you don't know our story, we have 3 different businesses. We have a real estate investing business, we have a wine and liquor store, and then we actually have a coaching and training business for entrepreneurs. And with the coaching business, the majority of what we've been doing has been one-on-one coaching. But we've been having so many requests over the last couple of months of people saying, guys, I love what you guys are doing. I love how you're doing it. And I want to work with you, but coaching just isn't the right fit yet. I'm not far enough along in my business, or, it's just not the right time. But I still want to work with you guys. And I still want to have, the guidance and the advice. And so, we said, well, we've got so many people saying this. Maybe we should put something else out. And so we've talked to a lot of people that have had those conversations with us over the last couple of months. And, there were a couple things that people said that they need that they're not getting today out of either their other coaches or, other memberships or other trainings that they're in. So what we want to do is really just kind of walk you guys through what we're thinking with this. And if this is something that sounds good for you, we'd love to have you and we'd love to be able to help you out. So first thing that people have said is that, I don't need another membership. What I need is mentorship. Right. And that's so key. I mean, like we've said, we've done a lot of one-on-one coaching, and that's been the biggest differentiator for people is it's not just a training course that you have to go implement on your own, but it's training and guidance and that accountability to make sure that you actually are getting things done. And if you have questions along the way, you've got someone that's already been on that path that guides you there.
Yeah. And I mean, we've been talking to a lot of people who have been in business for a little while now, maybe 6 months to a year in, and, they're continually getting frustrated. They're continually feeling lost when it comes to knowing what to focus on next. They feel like they lose momentum because there's just so much overwhelming information out there. There's so many things that they aren't sure if they should be doing for their business or shouldn't be doing for their business. And they don't really have anywhere to go with, like a trusted mentor or guidance from people who've been through it and from people who have those same life experiences as well. Because, obviously we're married and we also have the family aspect. So, people are looking for trusted guidance from someone that not only can talk about the business strategies, but also the life strategies a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's unfortunate, but there's a lot of training courses out there that someone learned something and then they went and made a training course on it, and they really don't have the experience behind that. So if you go through and ask them any of the questions, they're not going to be able to give you the real world experience of how to overcome some of those obstacles.
Yeah, and I think too the personal touch. Obviously, Tom and I have coaching, an offer for coaching if people are interested in that. But for those who aren't ready to invest in coaching yet and are jumping into courses or membership communities, a lot of those you really lose out on the personal touch once you join because it's kind of a DIY. And so we really wanted to make sure that people that were looking for guidance and being able to pop in somewhere and just ask questions and get those answered would have that sort of availability to still get that personal, maybe not one-on-one, but, one on a couple member group. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that actually leads into the next thing, which a lot of people said, I don't need more training videos or training courses. What I need is simple, actionable steps to grow my business. So when we take people through Plan with Purpose, they tend to come out the other end and say, this is awesome. I'm so excited. But now what's the next step, right? Like, do I go and start a business? Do I have to have an entity? How do I make sure I'm building the right product? How do I make sure I'm not wasting my money? And what a lot of people have said is that these training courses might hit on, one piece of that, but typically they're so complicated and they're so overwhelming that people don't feel like they can actually get in and complete steps every day like we identify so that they can move their business forward and actually make traction much faster. So a big part of what we want to do with this is really break this down to the itty-bitty pieces so that you guys can make progress on this every day. So ongoing support and accountability.
That was a big one, accountability.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I've spoken to over the last couple of weeks even talked about needing that accountability, but from someone who's a couple steps ahead as opposed to just having an accountability partner. There's a lot of us out there that have had accountability partners before, but it's a different dynamic than when you have somebody to go to that you trust to get you to the next level, not just kind of help you along with being productive.
Yeah, well, and so one of the unfortunate things is that for training courses, the majority of people don't actually finish the courses. And when we talk to people, a lot of it was because they didn't have that guidance and that accountability along the way. And given the fact that we are coaches and we love coaching, that's one of the things we want to bring to this mentorship, not just giving you guys the support that you need, but actually making sure that you're able to achieve what you're looking to do. And if not, we can jump in and kind of mastermind with you and say, hey, what's going on? Where is the challenge? Where's the gap here? And then here's some ways or experiences we've seen either from us or from our clients of how to get past that.
Yeah. And we don't want to keep you too long before we get to the Q&A portion. So we'll hurry up a little bit.
So next thing is access to customized guidance for your business. So it's great to have a training course out there, but when you hit some of these hurdles, unless you have someone that can kind of work through it with you, you're going to be stuck and you're not going to be able to move past that plateau that you've hit. So we also have years of experience in multiple businesses. So our first business, we started 10 years ago. Our second business was 5 years ago. And these are offline businesses that have had to go through, the real world stuff. We also have a lot of experience online, and I've spent years consulting.
Doing the wrong things first.
Yeah, in a lot of cases, but that's how we've learned. And then I've also spent years coaching actually corporate clients and corporate businesses, so we can bring those strategies to you guys as well. And then the biggest thing is really a supportive group of people that are all going in the same direction and looking for that financial freedom. Because once you have that group around you, rather than what is probably happening today, which is, a mismatch of people that are maybe on their traditional path and they're okay with that, once you get around like-minded people, it's amazing how much you guys can do together.
Yeah, so I know we've got a couple of you on live, and then also for those of you watching the replay, we decided that since you jumped on the chance to sign up for this live workshop and walk through this process with us, that we would kind of do almost like an early bird workshop bonus. So for anyone who thinks Lifestyle Builders would be a great fit for you and you want to jump on it and take action right away, we do have a couple bonuses. You get a private one-on-one coaching session with us for 30 minutes. And then also we're going to do a group workshop where we actually go through and map out your goals. So if that sounds like you want to jump on it, go right ahead. If it's not a great fit, we totally understand that too. You guys know us. You've been around the group or on our email list for a long time. So, we only want to put out these offers that feel right for you. So let's get to the Q&A.
Let's get to the Q&A. Well, just before that, if you guys are interested, here's how you can join. So we've got 2 simple pricing packages, and we wanted to keep this really low cost. So if you're watching this and, our typical coaching package is about $3,000. So that's us working one-on-one with you over the course of a couple months to really achieve your goals. But what we wanted to do with this was really make sure that this was low cost and affordable for you guys so that, it wasn't out of range. So you can join monthly for $49 a month. And you can, cancel anytime, and you can join annually for $490, and it's actually getting 2 months free. So we're not actually launching this.
Yeah, this is not going public until I think the 13th.
Yeah, so we're not actually launching it until next month. So if you join today, what you'll get is we'll actually give you that half-hour one-on-one coaching call to help you get started and kind of figure out your next steps. And then you'll also be part of that group training so that by the time this launches, you've already got your first steps set up, and then you're ready to go and, kick off things running. All right, so with that, what do we got for a Q&A?
All right, so Tammy, let me scroll back up here. Okay. Tammy says she thinks she needs this process for sure. I think I got lost as to how he is getting these metrics. So I was thinking maybe we could jump back to when you're planning out the roadmap, like maybe picking a goal and then talking through how to break that down into the milestones and then how you would go and figure out like what metrics you could measure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk through this. Hopefully this isn't too complicated, but this is a big part of what we're going to have in here is like step-by-steps of how to actually do things like metrics. So let's say, for example, that you wanted to leave your job and you said, my goal for leaving my job is 1 year. Right. And then so you went through and you figured out for your budget that you would need to bring in $5,000 a month in order to leave your job. Okay. So now you can break that down over the course of the year. And if you just, split it up exactly, you'd say, okay, well, each month, so at the end of first quarter, I would want to be bringing in, let's say, $1,250. My number's right on that?
You're asking the wrong person.
I was going to say, you're supposed to be, yeah. But so basically what you'd be doing is you'd be working backwards to say, okay, well, if I need to be bringing in $5,000 a month, at the end of the first quarter, I want to bring in $1,250 a month. And then at the end of the second quarter, I want to be bringing in half of what I need, which is $2,500. And then at the end of the third quarter, $3,750. And then by the end of the fourth quarter, I'm bringing in that $5,000 a month so I can quit my job. So we always want to work backwards to figure out, what are the end metrics. So the end metric in this case is going to be how much money you're taking home. But now we want to start, so that's basically called a lagging metric. So we can only see it after it's been done. So it's just like when we go to lose weight, right? So the lagging metric is going to be, I step on the scale and I see if I've lost the weight or not. But what we want to look at when we also look at metrics is what's called the leading metrics. And those leading metrics are going to basically predict if we're going to achieve our goal. So in the case of being able to bring home, $1,250 a month, one of the leading metrics might be the number of courses that I sell or the number of products that I sell. So I know that, like, for example, each week I might have to sell 10 of my products. So I can look at that each week and say, okay, am I selling 10? Am I over that or am I under that? And now I might want to say, well, I want to know before I get to the end of the week if I'm likely going to sell 10. So then we keep working backwards from there. So you might be able to take a look and say, okay, well, for every person that lands on my website, 1 out of 10 people will actually buy my product. So now you can work backwards from there and actually say, okay, well, if I've got to sell 10 and 1 out of 10 people are actually going to buy when they land on my website, then I've got to have 100 people land on my website in order to sell 10 of my products. Right? Does that make sense, Ariana?
Yes.
Okay, so basically we're just taking numbers and figuring out what has to happen. So now if I got to get 100 people landing on my website, what I can do is say, okay, so what is the best way for me to do that?
Yep.
So I might pick a strategy this week and say, well, I'm going to run Google ads and I'm going to spend a certain amount of money. And then each day I'm going to start looking, did I get enough people on my website? And if those 100 people landed on my website, then I'm going to look at, well, did 1 out of 10 buy? Well, if 1 out of 10 bought, then by the end of the week, I've likely sold my 10 products, and then I'm likely going to achieve my goal of what I need to bring home to leave my job. So I know that was a lot to cover, quickly on a call like this, but this is a lot of what we want to put together for you guys, is break down each step of that so that you guys can go through it, but then also have, calls where you guys can jump on and say, okay, I mapped out these metrics. Are these the right ones? Would you guys recommend something different? And then if those metrics are off and it's not really seeming like it's working, we'll jump in and brainstorm and deep dive to say, okay, well, have you tried this? Maybe you can look at this, or, let's, shift this thing. Does that make sense?
Tammy says thanks. LOL.
Well, and see, this is the stuff that really makes a difference. I know it sounds probably a little complicated now, but once you have these laid out, now when you're trying to figure out what you do next in your business, it becomes so much easier. You realize that, going through and doing some of these things that you think are important really aren't, because they're not directly getting you to the goals that you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, and I want to share my point of view on this as well, because I am one of those people I'm not really a numbers person, and I very often get frustrated and overwhelmed. We have our weekly meetings and our monthly meetings, and Tom always wants to know about the metrics, and I have such a hard time still, even after all these years, I have such a hard time putting the numbers out there. But I will tell you, doing that and actually being able to track and measure something that we've been working hard on has made such a huge, huge difference for me. I'll use the example for this course. We set a goal to get, I think, 100 subscribers? We got 100 subscribers for the free Plan with Purpose course. And when we first set that goal, it just seemed really big to me. We set it 2 weeks ago, so it seemed very fast, and I didn't really know how we were going to make that happen. But we had a couple things in the pipeline where we knew, okay, we're going to have traffic coming in here, and we decided to do some testing with Facebook ads, and we were very vocal about it and very loud in our group and our email list, and just telling people about this cool new thing that we had. And when we broke it down by day, I think it came out to 4 subscribers a day. So when I looked back at that number of 100, it didn't feel quite so huge for me to be like, oh, okay, 4 new subscribers a day doesn't seem as hard or as big as it did when we just threw the 100 number out there as a total. So what that's done for me is really helped me to see okay, it is a little scary sometimes to put the big numbers out there, especially when you're talking about incomes and how much you're making a month. But when you can break it down into those smaller pieces, and then you actually hit those pieces, that gives you the momentum. So now I'm all in, ready to go. I'm woohoo, we hit 100 subscribers. Now what? Now what can we do next? So even as frustrating as it can be, it does really help if you can break that down. Oh, Tammy has another question. Will you help us with setting up the metrics and software? That's actually something that Tom has been working on, with doing some very simple spreadsheets and forms for people to fill out as we're talking through some of this stuff. That would be something I think would want to work on and make sure we had in a way that makes sense for everyone, but definitely is something that we could help with, actually helping you figure out the metrics for whatever you're working on. So if it's email subscribers, if it's a different social platform, if it's sales, if it's income that you want to get for, a monthly income to start getting towards your goal, for sure something that we will be deep diving into with Lifestyle Builders. Tom's a spreadsheet junkie, so.
Yeah, well, and a big part of this is, we've been doing this for our real estate business, for our wine and liquor store, and then also for our coaching business. And, the big thing we've seen with people that we've helped go through this process, like a lot of our clients, is that they end up getting so much more done and making so much more traction in their business because they've identified the key things that they need to be looking at. And then by looking at them, they can make better decisions. So there's been a lot of people that have come to us and said, you know what, I've made more progress in the last month or two than I did in the last 2 years, because the last 2 years I was fumbling around and, I was doing like everything and I was spending a lot of money on things that weren't important. But once I've gone through this process and then especially working with us, we're able to help guide them in. And then when things aren't working, able to kind of jump in and dive in and get through that. And that's really the big thing that we want to do with you guys, is be able to help you and give you that hands-on. It's not going to be necessarily one-on-one coaching, but when we have these group calls, we'll dive in and we'll go deep with you to help you get through this. Unlike just a training course that's going to say, hey, go fill out the metrics, and then it's up to you to figure that out.
Yeah. That's the confusing part.
All right. What other questions do we have?
I think that is it for the questions in the chat. We had
a couple before, right?
Yeah, somebody before wanted to know how you make sure you don't drop the ball if you've got more than one business, or even if it's family versus the business, how you don't drop the ball on one thing while you're busy growing the other.
Gotcha. So the first thing I'd recommend there is, focus on one thing first. So some people want to start multiple businesses. They might look at us and say, hey, you guys have 3 income streams. I want 3. Well, you're going to get 3 by starting with 1. And so one of the big things we do is, first, we always put our personal lives first. So whenever we're planning anything out, we make sure that we understand what we want out of our personal lives. And then if you're, focusing on other things, you're going to layer in the most important things for, let's say, each of those businesses or each of those perspectives. And you're going to do essentially the activity we did earlier, where you identify what's urgent and what's important, but then you're just going to rank them against each other. So for example, for us, like I said, personal life comes first. We put all those things first. But then with the limited time that we have remaining, we look at each of our businesses and say, well, what are the top things that we've got to do? And if we're not able to get everything done, that's when we start looking at, well, do we got to start delegating more? Are there things that we just shouldn't be doing? Are there things that we can automate? But it first starts with getting that brain dump out there and then figuring out what's going to make it, what's not, and then what to do with what's not going to make it.
Yep. And we had another question from before as well, which was how to focus on one thing when I have so many great ideas.
Yeah. So by going through this process, it's really going to help you identify what's important to you. And then when you break that roadmap out, it's going to help you define, okay, what should my focus be, let's say, for the next 90 days. So a lot of times, we might have 20 things we want to get done, but once you put them on the roadmap and then you start having to put them side by side and saying, okay, well, is this more important than that? Then it's easier to make those decisions. So for example, one of the things with us is Ariana's wanted a bigger house for the last several years. So when we get together and do this goal planning, we have it on the wall and then we look at everything else that's competing against that. And we say, okay, so with that, which one is a higher priority? How much can we fit in and what makes sense to shift? So because we were really focusing on building our businesses and getting the income from those up, we decided that trying to buy a house in the middle of that was actually going to move us away from our goal. So we pushed buying the house out for a little bit so that we could focus on getting our businesses to the point we wanted. And then we continuously reevaluate when is the right time to say, buy that new house.
So we just had Joyce join us. So Joyce, let us know if you have any questions about the Plan with Purpose course or any of the process within there. And then I just wanted to talk about the whole ideas thing. I know a lot of people have just so much going on in their head. That's why I extremely, extremely suggest the brain dump, because that's I have a million tabs open all the time between the businesses and the family and the kids and us, and just I freak out thinking that I'm going to forget something important, which I often do because I don't have a chance to get to the whiteboard and add it, or to Evernote and add it. So I highly suggest at least doing a brain dump once a week if you need it. And then also having somewhere for yourself to keep track of all that stuff. I know a lot of people are into journaling. We are huge, huge fans of Evernote because we literally can have online notebooks that are connected to the cloud so that I really know that I will never lose an idea because it's in there somewhere. And it has a tagging system so you can, tag your stuff. It has a recording option so you can record notes to yourself. But having that peace of mind that you know that your ideas are all somewhere will allow you to kind of let go of that, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do because I've got all these ideas and I don't know which one to pick. Now it's, okay, I've got all these ideas out. Let me evaluate which one I think is going to be the best to try. And that's another one too. I know a lot of people are like, well, I have 3 great ideas. How do I know which one to choose? Sometimes you just have to literally close your eyes and pick one because they all might be 3 really good ideas, but you cannot pick to do all 3 of them at the same time. Splitting your focus is going to be a huge, huge detriment to you because if you split focus between 3 different things, you're never going to actually know which one is working. So, pick the, 1 week to test it or 2 weeks to test it and then maybe swap over and do the next thing.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so, why we're so excited about actually Lifestyle Builders and doing this mentorship with you guys is this is all the stuff that we do with our one-on-one coaching clients. So like I have a client right now that's got like 4 different potential things that he wants to do. And so what we're doing is we're actually running him through a process of laying those 4 things out. And then we're working backwards on each of those ideas to say, okay, well, this idea, your product is going to sell for $1,000, but the market's smaller. So are you going to be able to get enough people? So we actually go through an analysis like that to say, well, these are the 4. This one seems like it has the most potential. So we're going to put the other 3 on hold and we're going to go forward with this first one. But then using those metrics, you're going to be able to see over the course of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if you're able to start gaining traction with that. If you're not, then we can go back and evaluate and make some adjustments, or we might say that idea, it looked like it was good, but it's really not. So now we're going to go to the next one. But we incrementally test that and we make sure that we're doing it in a smart way instead of trying to do all 4 at once, which is not going to work at all.
I just got the notification. Tammy is in.
Oh, very nice. Welcome, Tammy.
Welcome. I'm so excited.
All right. What other questions do we have?
Joyce says, this sounds absolutely awesome. Are you doing another webinar that I can share? I don't know if we have our next workshop scheduled yet. We are planning on putting another one on there. We just have to double check our calendars, but I will put that in the email as well. I'm remembering right now. I'm going to write it down. So as we send out the replay, we'll let you know when the next one is going to be so you can either jump on live or share it out if you want to share it with anyone you know it would help.
Yeah, our goal with these is we want to run, these types of webinars at least once a month, maybe more. Because one of the frustrations we've had is that, this simple process can really help get a lot of people started on the right foot. And, so many people are missing it. So we want to make sure that, we can help you guys out. And, even if it's, friends of yours that are struggling, we want to make sure that we're running these live. 1, people can go through the course outside of that. But then 2, getting on here live, then we can answer the questions and really help guide you guys through things. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up today?
I don't think I have any more from ahead of time. Let me just double check. No, I think that was it.
All right. Well, I was going to say great questions. And those are the things, like I said, that come up time and time again with our coaching clients. So as we sign off for today, like I said, if you guys want to get in on the Lifestyle Builders mentorship, really get guidance from us on, starting and growing your business and, not just plan with purpose, but everything else that comes with really figuring out what business works for you and then how to make sure that you're actually able to build that business to build your life. We'd love to have you guys. So you can join at tomandariana.com/join. And if you guys sign up before we actually launch this live, we're going to give you guys a free half-hour coaching session as well as a group session to really help you guys figure out your goals through the end of this year, but then also plan out next year so that you're set up for success from the beginning.
Yeah, come join Tammy.
All right. Well, with that, have a great day, guys, and we'll be seeing you around.
All right. Bye.